The final war in the book's analysis of the 150-year period from 1853 to 2003 is the Iraq War. The outbreak of this war, whose effects still resonate loudly in 2020, was due to the faulty U.S. intelligence alleging that Saddam possessed weapons of mass destruction and intended to use them against other countries in the Middle East as well as against the American homeland. Since the outbreak of this war occurred during a period of rising happiness in the U.S. Congress from 1969 to the present, it will support the book's hypothesis if President George W. Bush, the younger, and his inner circle of advisors had a bona fide belief that the faulty intelligence was accurate. The psycholinguistic analysis of President Bush's State of the Union addresses indicates that, unlike his father, George H.W. Bush, the younger Bush has a depressive temperament, as we can see in this chart. However, the latter's inner circle of influential advisors, consisting primarily of Vice President Dick Cheney and Secretary of State Colin Powell, both have happy temperaments based on psycholinguistic analysis. For example, in the 5 White House speeches about Iraq cited in the Congressional Rockefeller-Bond report, which we will discuss later, the younger Bush had a much higher usage of sadness words than either Cheney or Powell, as we can see in this chart. The fact that the latter two individuals were also the close advisors of President George W. Bush's father in 1990 to 1991 when the Gulf War occurred, with Cheney as the Secretary of Defense and Powell as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is significant since it facilitates the institutional stickiness of the reputation for resolve which the Bush Sr. White House attached to Saddam in 1990, and should, according to the book's hypothesis, more than offset any underestimation of Saddam that Bush Jr. would be otherwise inclined to make on his own due to his depressive temperament. The issue of whether the Bush White House had a bona fide belief in the accuracy of the faulty intelligence concerning Saddam's alleged possession of weapons of mass destruction and his intentions to use them was considered by a congressional committee in the Rockefeller-Bond report mentioned earlier, which was released on June 5, 2008. The majority portion of the report, which was written by Democrat members, was endorsed by 2 of the committee's 7 Republicans and by all of its Democrats. The majority report opined that the Bush administration deliberately concealed and misrepresented the available intelligence to support its desire to go to war with Iraq in 2003. Specifically, the majority found that the Bush White House assertions in public speeches about Iraq's nuclear and chemical weapons, bomb-proof underground facilities, unmanned aerial vehicles, and willingness to supply weapons of mass destruction to various terrorist groups to attack the U.S. were either unsubstantiated by the evidence or failed to accurately reflect the uncertainties or dissenting opinions within the intelligence assessments. If the majority report were correct, then it would contradict the book's hypothesis, since it would indicate that the Bush White House did not engage in a bona fide overestimation of Saddam's resolve. In their dissent, the Republican minority members of the committee put forward several pieces of exculpatory evidence not mentioned in the majority's report, such as the fact that the President's October 7, 2002 speech in Cincinnati was fact-checked by the CIA beforehand, and that the first draft of Powell's February 5, 2003 speech to the UN Security Council was actually written by the CIA, not just fact-checked. The Republican dissent also noted that the majority's report did not include the President's executive summary of the full national intelligence estimate, which characterized the contrary views differently than the full report, and in the case of UAVs, completely omitted the contrary opinions. Given that President Bush was well known for his aversion to detailed research, it is reasonable to assume that he relied on the executive summary and did not find the time to delve into the full report. Finally, the Republican dissent noted that, according to the congressional record, many prominent Democrat senators who had access to virtually exactly the same intelligence as the Bush White House, such as Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, John D. Rockefeller, Charles Schumer, and John Edwards, made statements indicating that they had come to the same conclusions regarding Saddam as the Bush White House did. On balance, therefore, it is evident that the Bush White House likely made a bona fide overestimation of Saddam's resolve in 2003 and did not deliberately misconstrue or misrepresent the available intelligence in their public statements. Instead, the reason for the egregious intelligence failure was likely that the Bush White House was deliberately misled and steered in the direction of war by the members of the deep state within the CIA, such as the individuals there who wrote Colin Powell's key speech to the UN on February the 5th, 2003, shortly before the outbreak of the Iraq War. This further supports the book's hypotheses.